everyone, and thank you very much for your kind invitation to be here. I was quite shocked to be invited back. Peter invited me to talk to a smaller group of you about 12 months ago, and my background is mathematics, and so I'm often described as the geek in the room, and presentation, and they start to pull out the chart, all the numbers and that sort of stuff. You normally people start falling asleep. And so I said to Peter, look, if you want me to come back, make sure I'm on pre-lunch, please. So I've got a few charts here to talk you through today because people are interested in economy and where are we up to in economy. And my background is the fund management world. So if I can spend 5 minutes talking you through that, some of these charts might make some sense to you. My fund management days were some 12 years ago, and I did it quite well. And a lot of CEOs back then used to say to me, how is it that you know when to buy our stocks and not buy our stocks, and how is it that you pick things, and why are you putting cash here and there? And I started to explain to them the formula from which I was buying and selling companies. And at 32 years of age, I decided to get out of the fund management world and start helping businesses run their businesses a little bit differently. And I was out initially helping large corporates work their share prices. And then one day I got invited to go and talk to an accountant friend of mine, one of his closest clients. And there was two little old ladies running this business. And excuse the language, but they were 61 and 63. And when I was 32, they looked like old ladies and don't look old anymore. But they were running this business, and I went out and had a look at it, and I had to meet these ladies in their house. Because they didn't want the staff knowing that they were selling the business. And I sat down with them and I said, so how big is this, what have you got? And they said, we're making profits of 300 grand. And I had to stop for a moment because this was the smallest business I'd ever met in my entire life. And I wrote down 300, and I was so used to writing billions and trillions next to it that writing a K, I couldn't even work out how to write a K after it. And I said to them, look, I've never seen anything this small in my whole life. What is it that you want to do with it? And they said, well, we've been offered, someone wants to buy this thing, we want to retire. And we've been offered 900 grand for it. And the accountant said, you'd know whether to sell this thing or not sell this thing. And so I sat with them for another 10 minutes and I had a look through it. And I said, look, I definitely wouldn't sell this. There's a lot of things you could do with this. And they said, what do we have to do? And I said, well, you probably have to work with me for another 6 to 9 months. I've got to change a few things in your business, and I think we can sell it for more than 900 grand. And they said, what if you can't sell it for more than 900 grand? You've delayed our retirement by 9 months, and what if we only get 700 grand? And I said, I'll underwrite it. They said, to the tune of what? And I said, the whole 900. And they said, and what if we sell it for more than 900? I said, I'll take 10%. And this was my first deal that I'd ever done in the small business market. I knew nothing about small businesses. Over the next 9 months, I fell in love with these two ladies who were a couple, which I later found out, and had been a couple for over 30 years. And some 9 months later, I got their business ready for sale, and we got 11.2 million for it. And they've been friends for life. And they said, and when I started working with them, they said, Darren, you're telling all this stuff, we don't understand any of it. And I said, it's all right, it's all mathematics. You'll get it later on. And they said, well, explain some of this stuff to us. And I said, well, look, you're running a company with 33 staff in it. You can't make any money in a company with 33 staff in it. And they said, but we've got great people and a great product. And I said, I don't care. You can't run a company with 33 staff in it. I don't care how good your people are. I don't care how good your product is. I don't care how good the salespeople you are. You're in the service industry and you cannot make money out of 33 staff. That's it. I know you want to talk grey, but for me the world is black and white, and they're just the numbers. 24 staff you could make money, 48 staff you could make money, 33 staff you're in this no man's land and you're not going to make any money. And I started talking to a bunch of people and realised that there was a whole bunch of people in the world, in the smaller business sector, who actually didn't know all these numbers. A chap literally this morning, 7:30 this morning, phoned me up. And he said, I've got 104 staff in a business and we're doing 8.2 million. And I said, and before you open your mouth, you're not making any money. And he said, how'd you know? I said, you can't run 104 staff in a business doing 8, you can't, the numbers don't work. And this is my world, it's mathematics. It's really interesting, isn't it? It drives my wife mad because does anyone do those Sudoku puzzles? the little matrix with all the numbers in it and all that sort of stuff. Well, most people like to do the Sudokus with the numbers in it, so you get some stars. Well, I go and do the killer Sudokus. They're the ones that you start with the matrix with no numbers in them at all. And they just give you the boxes, and you've got to add up a certain number of numbers within it to add the boxes together. And you start with no numbers at all. And I get my assistant to go and collect them out of the newspapers for me, and I say, go and find the ones that are at 60 minutes plus, so that it puts a timetable at the top, and it says it should take you about 60 minutes to do these. And I live out in Richmond, so when I get on the train at Waterloo after visiting clients, the train takes 18 minutes to get out to Richmond. And I make sure I finish them before I get to Richmond. So they're 60 minutes long, and I knock them all out. I usually knock them out by putting, by the way. But now this is my idea of fun. So weekends are kind of strained with the wife and I. This is my idea of fun. And my 7-year-old daughter popped out, and literally a couple of weeks ago she came home and she said, Dad, I'm not enjoying school. And I said, oh, here we go. I got beaten up badly at school. And I said, what's happening, sweetie? And she said, well, I love maths. Like, I love maths, but I hate all this literacy stuff. And they won't just do maths all day. Why do they have to do literacy? And I thought, oh, it comes back to bite you, doesn't it? So my world is mathematics. If you want to chat to me, great, but don't ask me about people. I've got no idea at all. Or cultures and all sorts of stuff. But I can tell you how to run your business. I can tell you whether you'll make any money out of it. I can tell you what you'll sell it for. I've helped literally hundreds of businesses now over the last 12 years sell the businesses for way more than they ever would have got. Literally a chap come up to me 3 weeks ago in Wales and had an offer on the table for $12.5 million for his business. And I had a quick look at it, and I phoned the people up who'd made the offer for $12.5 million, and in one phone call I got him 16.8. One phone call, because they hadn't identified all the assets sitting within the business. Now maybe another $4 million doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people in the world, but to a lot of people, an extra $4 million on sale is good numbers, yes or no? And I just think there's a lot of people in the world who aren't, looking at the numbers and aren't seeing the business for what it is. And I turn that around. And anyway, going back to Australia. One of my first clients in the property sector was a chap called John McGrath, and maybe some of you know John. And John was one of my biggest clients in the early days, and I went into John's office, and he sat down and he said, I'm running this sales operation, and this is the size, and this is how much money we're making out of it. And I've got this lettings business, and we're not making any money out of it. And I said, then you're not going to. And he said, why? And I said, well, because in my world, what you've done is you've gone down what I call a logical extension. And logical extensions don't work. And he said, explain that to me, Darren. And I said, well, what you have is a sales business. I said, look, I'll put it into corporate speak for you. Here's a company that builds building materials. And they went out about 2 years ago and they went and bought an oil rig. I said, do you think they know anything about oil rigs? And he said, no. And I said, well, here's a business called a sales business. It sells properties. And you're very good at selling properties. And the logical thing for you to do, because you sell businesses and some people want to rent them out, is to put a rent roll together. And he said, yes. And I said, what do you know about running a business that's got nothing to do with sales? Lettings is a process machine, it's a machine. And I said, and so you take your logic around how to run a business and you're trying to apply the same logic you're applying to sales to a lettings part of your business. And I said, you've got no idea, have you? And John laughed and he said, clearly not. And he said, what have I got to do? And I said, get out of the way, I'll send a bunch of people in there who will process people and I'll build you your machine and you'll make a fortune out of this lettings thing. And he said, okay, go do it. And I said, okay, I've got one thing before I go in there to talk to you about. And he said, okay. I said, because you mentioned to me you've had other people come in here and try and fix this thing before and they've all failed and you've kicked them all out. And he said, yes, I have. What's the issue? And I said, well, I'm going to tell you a little story. Right? It's a story about a little old lady sitting in her house and the wallpaper fell off. And she got someone to come around and fix the wallpaper, and the person came around and put the wallpaper back up, and she paid them and said, thank you very much, and away they went. And 3 weeks later, the wallpaper fell off the wall. So of course she didn't ring the same tradesperson back, she rang someone else, and they came around and they put the wallpaper back on the wall and she paid them, and 3 weeks later the wallpaper fell off the wall. And I repeated this a couple more times until he was bored and frustrated. And then I said, and then finally someone came around and said, wallpaper's fallen off 4 times now. It's clearly not the wallpaper. Would you mind if I go up and have a look in your roof? So the tradesperson goes up and has a look in the roof. and finds there's a hole in the roof. So he comes back down and says to the little old lady, I can fix the wallpaper, what you need to know for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be up there fixing this hole in your roof. And if you get frustrated because the wallpaper hasn't been fixed yet, it's not going to be for probably a month because I have to fix the hole in the roof. And he said, okay. I said, if you remember that story, I'm happy to do the job for you. And he said, got it. 4 months later, he comes to me and he says, Darren, this lettings thing is not making me money yet. And I said, I'm still up in the roof. And it was the point where John realised that you've got to understand the business that you're running, the type of business that you're running, and how the business runs, and how many staff you need in those businesses. Because he was applying a lot of logic that he applied in the sales business, and he was trying to apply it to this other thing called a lettings business, and it wasn't really working for him. And I tell that story because I just bumped into Peter Rollins and John McGrath. When I moved over to the UK about 10 years ago, John McGrath said to me, look, if you want to get a foothold in the UK market, go and see Peter Rollins. So I went and saw Peter in my first week here, and jumped off the train and off I went to see Peter and had this. And I walked through the door expecting this door to be open and, John and John's an old mate of mine, come in and we'll help you. And all of a sudden I found out what the British way of doing life was all about, which was, right, Shirlaw, you're an ex-convict and you just got off the plane. Go and look after yourself. Here's a cup of tea, by the way. Come back once a year and see me, and if you hang around for the next 5 years, then I might talk to you. And I went, oh my God, do they do things differently here in England? And it was a realisation of culture. And of course, some 12 years later now, I'm in 11 countries around the world. And we just opened up in Saudi Arabia about 3 weeks ago. And we talk about different cultures, it's quite amazing. And one of the things I try and say to people when they're running multiple business lines is that the culture of a sales business and the culture of a lettings business is very different. And trying to get your mind around that is really important. So I started there, and in 2007, so I started the business in 1999, and in 2007, I realised that the economy was going to go into recession. And so I pulled 150 of my clients in a room in February of 2007, and I said to them, you need to stop doing what you're doing, and you need to stop recruiting, and you need to start to cash up. Because in about July of this year, the world is going to go to custard. And I'm talking serious stuff. And in 2007, the world was absolutely in boom mode. And a lot of my clients just said to me, Darren, you're smoking drugs, you've got no idea what you're talking about. Why would we stop when we're making so much money right now? And I said, seriously, the world is just about to go to custard, and you need to hear me. And I copped a huge amount of flack in 2007 as I walked around trying to tell people to stop and slow down. And I started to talk to people about the rules of thumb. And one of the things I realised in doing fund management and understanding economy and doing mathematics is I just understand a few things that a lot of people in business don't. And now I just try and share those. So in 2007, I sat down and I said, look, in the fund management world, we have what we call a rule of thumb. And the rule of thumb is that if it takes longer to sell a home in the United States by more than 9 months, then the whole world goes into a global recession. And in February 2007, that number was up to 8 months and 20-something days. And I said, this isn't going to turn around. We're going through 9 months. And I explained to them that fund managers are a bit like sheep. They're quite stupid. In the context that if it's 8 months and 29 days, none of them will move their money. But as soon as it hits 9 months, everyone moves their money. And so overnight, this thing hits 9 months in July, and then fund managers start moving their money straight into cash. So July, it starts to go down. And then sort of every 6 months I had 150 of our clients in a room saying, what do we do next, what do we do next, what do we do next? And I wrote 43 articles over the last 5 years explaining at every point in the way what was going to happen next in the recession and on what days they were going to occur. So at the end of February 2009, after we'd had a 20-month down cycle, I spoke to this group, and one of those funny stories where you're talking to about 50 people in a room. And if you can imagine, we've gone down now for about 20 straight months and the world's feeling really bad. And I got up and I said, look, in about a week from now, the markets are going to turn. And I got this stunned silence in the room. And they were like, in a week from now. I said, yeah, somewhere about the 5th, 6th, 7th of March, probably. And when it turns, it'll go up for about 6 months, through to about September. It'll go up by 52%. The markets will bounce by about 52%. And then it'll stay flat for 2 years, so that takes us through to September 2011. Then it'll drop off for about 6 months. And so in March 2012, the world will announce a double-dip recession. Right? And I got this stunned silence in the room. And I finished the session, and I think there were like sheets like you've got there today. And I got these scores of like 1 out of 10. And I got a note from the equivalent of Peter running the session, which was an email saying something along the lines of, "You're the worst speaker we've ever had. Take your mathematics and shot it somewhere politely. And please never come back." Right? And 6 months later, I got an email saying, "Could you please come back?" And I wrote and said, "Why? You told me I was the worst speaker you've ever had in the whole world." And the chap was kind enough to send me some emails that he got from the participants after that session, and one of them said, "Who does this guy think he is, Nostradamus or something?" And then they got an email from that same chap back saying, "Oh my God, everything he said has come through. Can you get this guy back to tell us what to do next?" So I went back and of course got 10 out of 10 ratings for the next thing. And what I explain to people is all of this stuff is just rules of thumb. If you know the property sector really well, I don't. You know how to go out and look at a house, you know which houses to buy, you know how to rent them out, you know the property sector really well. And what I try and encourage business people to do is just to see that the financial markets are a lead indicator for about 6 months to what's going to happen in the economy. And it's a really important point, that what happens in the stock exchange is a lead indicator for 6 months as to what's going to happen in the economy. So why have I been pushing the point with our clients around, which are all small business people? And I've just been saying to them, watch the markets really closely, because whatever happens in the market, 6 months later, that's what's going to happen in the economy. And we are the economy, aren't we? I'm running a business, you're running a business. We're really interested in what's happening out there, when a sale's going to come off, when should you be cashing up, etc., etc. So this 6 months bounce, they were asking me what are the rules of thumb, and in March 2009 I said, the bottom of the cycle, it never goes below the previous low. The previous low was some 5 years earlier. This is 91% of the way down, so it's not going to go any further. When it bounces, it always bounces by 6 months, rule of thumb. Why? Because reporting periods are done every 3 months, so the cycles are 6 monthly on the exchange. Why is it going to bounce 52%, Darren? Well, the rule of thumb is if a market goes down by 52%, it'll bounce by 52%. If it goes up by 20%, it bounces by 20%. Anyone bored yet? Because once you start to do all the maths, people just, they start to go, wow. And I go, but if you just keep it really simple, there's some really interesting stuff there for your businesses. And the really interesting point now is this, and I'll show you the charts in 2 seconds, but the really interesting point now is this. My current commentary is, we are now closer to the end of the recession than the start. And that seems like a really obvious point, but it's actually not. Because recessions can go for 10 years, they can go for 3 years, but we're more towards the end of the recession than we are the start. And I'm now saying to people, now is the time to invest in your business. Someone asked me the other day, what's the best asset class that you can possibly put money into right now? Is it gold or property or stocks or whatever? And I said, actually, it's in your business. And people say, why? And I go, because when you invest in your business, it takes about 12, 18 months for you to see a return on that. And in 12 to 18 months from now, the economy is going to be stepping up again. And people say, why are you so confident of that? And I go, well, Google the concept called double dip recession and see how many hits there are on there and see how many articles you can read. And then Google the concept called triple dip recession and see what the statistical probability there is of us going into a third dip. And quite seriously, the answer is it's really small. So when you've had 2 dips coming through a recession, the confidence for you now should be that that's it. And right now you'll be saying, oh, but Greece is about to fall over and the euro is about to fall over, and I go, yeah, there's about another 6 to 12 months of wash through yet. There's another 6 to 12 months of really bad stuff that's still about to occur in the economy. But if it takes 12 to 18 months of you investing in your business to start to see the return on that, then you get the timing perfectly right. Because what I believe most business people will do is this. You'll wait until you open the newspaper and the newspaper says the world's moving again and things are positive again. You'll wait until there's a front page which says positive GDP growth, etc., etc. And then you'll then get your confidence up because you read about it. And then you'll start to invest in your business. And then it takes another 18 months for that investment to come through, which means by the time you've read the newspaper that things have picked up, then they've already picked up. So you missed the pickup anyway. And then it takes another 18 months of your investing to actually come through. So you missed the pickup by about 2 to 3 years. And so I'm trying to say to people, you need to start to go now. Now, me sending that message out right now, like Greece is about to fall over, etc., is a little bit like 2007, me walking around at the height of the boom saying, you know, stop. And right now I'm saying, we're right at the bottom, go. And I'm getting the same blank looks that I got in 2007, and the same blank looks I got in 2009. If you can hear it, you can hear it. Let me just show you the charts, if I may. If we can flip to these charts. And I'm just going to give you a couple of these so you can Google some of these. But this is just the FTSE. I just pick it because I'm in England, you know, doing this presentation. If I was over in America, I'd use the Dow. It doesn't really matter which one you use around the world, they all look the same because it was a global crisis. So if you want to Google this, but if you have a look at these charts, if you can see 1999, you'll see that it was at a height. And from 1999 to 2003 was just a big down cycle. 1999 was when I started my business. So I started it at the start of a recession and down to 2003. And then we bounced and we came up all the way to 2007 there. And then I draw the line up and over so you can start to see the curve that this thing's unfolded in. Because in 2007 there were lots of articles about is this going to be an L-shaped, V-shaped or W-shaped recession, and in 2007 I was walking around saying to everybody, look, this is going to definitely be a W-shaped recession. And people would say, why? And I'd say, because there's a rule of thumb that says that if the markets fall by more than 50%, you go into a W-shaped recession. And the last time we went into a W-shaped recession was back in the 1970s, and W's only occur every 30 to 40 years. So we're due to have one. The one before that, by the way, was 1937-38. So on a timing basis, this is working perfectly. And the way you run a business out of a W-shaped recession is very different than the way you run a business out of a V-shaped recession. So I've been saying to CEOs for the last 5 years, you know, were you around in 1973-4 as the CEO of your business? And most people say, no, I wasn't. And I say, well then, you have not run your business out of a W-shaped recession before. You've only ever run it out of a V. And how you run this out of a W is very different. And so, you know, have a look at these charts really carefully because they are a 6-month lead indicator as to what's going to happen in the economy. If we go to the next chart, you'll see back to the 1970s. Can you see the exact same formation of the chart? Up and over, a little W in the middle, and then through to 1977, and there's the W unfolding. Right? Perfectly shaped W. We haven't had that since that period. And in a longer session where people get to ask lots of questions and that sort of stuff, people say, yeah, but you know, that was the oil crisis back then, this is something different, etc., etc. And I go, yeah, it was, but the charts are exactly the same. People say, well, in the 1930s, surely something was different to the 1930s to today because of the technology. And I go, yeah, look, technology has advanced enormously since the 1930s, but the human being hasn't. And the human being is still driving all these markets and still making all these choices and still, you know, messing up businesses, and fund managers are still investing in the wrong things and all that sort of stuff. The human being hasn't changed. So these trend charts are exactly the same. Down to, you know, and again, if I could do more charts and all that sort of stuff, which would bore the hell out of most of you, you know, the statistics are frighteningly similar. If any of you want to grab these, I'll just quickly give them to you. But 1929 through 1932, it took 2 years and 7 months for the market to fall. If we go back one chart, please. In 2000, you'll see there 1999, 2000, down, it took 2 years and 8 months for that market to fall. 2 years, 7 months back then, 2 years, 8 months this time. With more technology, it took 1 month longer for that cycle to go down. At the bottom of that cycle was October 2003. October 2002, all the way up to October 2007. It was exactly 5 years for that cycle to run. In October 1932 to October 1937 was exactly the 5 years for that cycle to run. Let me repeat that. October 32, October 02, October 37, October 2007. Exactly 5 years, October to October. Did I say that too fast? Does it horrify you how similar it was? From October 2007 through to 2008, it took 1.21 years for the market to fall 52%. 1937 to 38, it took 1.19 years for the market to fall exactly the same number, 52%. These markets, if you look at them on a big enough trend line, they follow the same trends. Now, if that's true, this helps you run your business, because this is a 6-month lead indicator of what's going to happen next. Let me just take you forward and we'll see what's in the chart. See, there's the W-shaped recession, right? The big down phase on the red, that was 07 through 09. So if you want to scroll any notes down, the top of the red was July 07, the bottom of the red was the 6th of March 2009. Going up the bounce, March 09, the top of the green there was September 09. And then the drag phase is 2 years, it's always 2 years. So September 09 through to September 11. And that's exactly as it unfolded. And then the release always takes 6 months. So the yellow bit there on the release takes 6 months. So it was always going to be that the double dip was going to be announced at the end of the first quarter of 2012. It was always going to be. Highly predictable 5 years ago. Where are we right now? We're at the end of the yellow. And so people say, why are you standing on stage, Darren, so confident that things are going to improve? I go, well, have a look at the charts. Like, they're right there. It's black and white, there's no grey. I know you want there to be grey, but there's no grey. Now, what's going to happen next? Well, please note this. That blue bit called up, the next phase is not a boom. If you want to Google something called the words economic clock, and look up a company by the name of Count, C-O-U-N-T. For any mathematicians in the room, look up a chap called Enzo. He's the guy I use, but it's a very highly sophisticated mathematical formula. You want the easy one, go to Count. And that talks you through the economic cycle. And through the economic cycle, when we come out of this yellow bit to go to the blue bit, we don't go from recession straight to boom. What we do is we go from recession into what's called a hesitant, uneven recovery. And hesitant, uneven recovery means there's some good news and still some bad news in the economy. Past hesitant, uneven recovery, you start to move up to general recovery. Right? And then there's the next phase, and finally you end up in a boom. And that boom cycle is sort of about 5 or 6 years away. So people sort of see this chart and go, oh, right, so it's the 1st of April 2012, everything's sun and roses again, and we're all going to be fine. And I go, no, there's still a lot of wash through yet. So for business people, what you need to do is invest cautiously right now, but you need to invest. There's no point holding back. If we just flip through to the next one, what I then do is I link that for business people into this conversation. And this is a bit of technology that our business uses, which is called the status cycle. And what this does is it looks at a business's own growth cycle. And in this session, and I put these charts together so that if you want to go to Peter and get them sent out to you, you're very welcome to use them. But essentially what this does is it looks at the life cycle of the business. And it goes back to when you were in startup. So for a lot of you, that might be 10, 20 years ago. And it looks at the cycle that you go through from startup all the way through. And very quickly, you go into startup, you get your business set up. Eventually, you end up in what's called good times. And so you've got a good business now, and it's unfolding, and it's going through its nice, normal, incremental growth year in, year out. And probably people describe those good old days, as they call them, quite well, because they sold a property for $500,000, and it was the first property they ever sold at that level. And they opened a bottle of champagne, and then they cracked a house for $750,000. And sold that one for the first time ever, and then cracked a bottle of champagne. And then they sold a house for $1 million, and then cracked a bottle of champagne. And it's just incremental growth year in, year out. Until you hit this thing called payback. And in payback, you're selling houses for much bigger numbers now. And you've got quite a few, houses or commercial properties on your books selling for big numbers. And you look over your shoulder and you've got lots of properties on your books for $500,000 and lots of properties on your books for 750 grand. And only a few years ago you were cracking the champagne because you got your first one on. And that's called payback. And then suddenly the business gets a bit bigger and you move into what I call high growth mode, which for the owners moves them into a frustration or a stress stage. And so suddenly what they're doing is, instead of out selling properties every day, they are now managing staff, managing IT problems, managing budgets, managing tax problems. Clients are ringing them up and saying, you know, can you help me? And you're saying, well, please go and talk to my staff. And you say, yeah, but you gave me a business card 8 years ago and said if I've ever got a problem, I should call you. And you know, you're bigger now and saying, but please go and talk to my staff. And so the owners suddenly move from being at the front of the office to the back of the office, and they hit this second brick wall. And the second brick wall is a big transformation stage where a lot of them are in high stress mode. And you know, I used to see this in the fund management days. And the serious nature of that is that this is where people, you know, people have heart attacks. Chap this morning told me about his 47-year-old business partner who died last week from a heart attack. This is where heart attacks occur. This is where divorce occurs. This is where stress and depression and all that sort of stuff is. This is where profits go down. This is the good fun part of the business. And every business goes through this sort of cycle and hits this phase. And what I'm sort of showing people at the moment is that without a recession, you would have just normally gone up that growth cycle, eventually hit that wall. Most people spend 3 to 5 years in that wall, and then they get themselves out and they go up to an advanced growth state. And advanced growth, if you want to take any notes, that's called utopia. Advanced growth is where the owner is now running the business, doesn't have to turn up every day. Literally, a chap I was just talking to before we come in here, you know, he's been running the business now for the last 7 years, and he turns up once a month for an hour. He's got an MD in there running it, etc. And I said, there's utopia. There's why people get into business, right? What's happened is this: if you just take that basic cycle, and I put that over the W, then a lot of people have been artificially pushed up to that second brick wall. Their businesses, you know, without a recession, it would have just naturally moved its way up to that second brick wall. But with a recession, a lot of sales are down, a lot of lettings are down, a lot of numbers are down, and it gets artificially pushed through to that second wall. And so what I say is, look, if you're up near that wall, you know, because what I was asked to do is give you a couple of clues about what to do with the business right now, and my biggest clue is this: if you're in that wall, then you've got to get yourself out of the wall in the next 6 months. Because you want to be out of the wall to have that whole uplift, that green part there that I've got. You want to be out of the wall, out of your own wall, to experience the full uplift of the economy. You know, this next one says there's someone in a big wall who's going to spend a lot of their time in the wall whilst the economy's taking off. Now, if that occurs for you, then you're going to miss a lot of the growth that's going to occur in the next cycle. And some people, worse still, will sort of do nothing. And this is what I was sort of referring to earlier, when, you know, if you do nothing and wait for the newspapers to tell you that it's all okay again before you start to invest, well, then you might be still in the wall while we're in boom mode. And if that occurs, then you're going to miss the next boom, essentially, and you miss the whole thing. Now, the key thing I can tell you today is this: the next boom is going to be short. It's not going to be long. Because we've had such a big recession and such a big clean out and a double dip and lots of stuff, the boom that follows the double dip recession is never very long. So this next boom is not going to be 7 years plus, it's more likely going to be 4 to 5 years. And so if you miss the next sort of 5 year up cycle, well then we're back into the next mini recession, as it will be called. And you know, you've got to wait for another 2 or 3 years to get through that recession before you experience the next thing. And now I've just added 8 or 9 years to you before you start getting good profits going, and some of you are ready to slit your wrist. So you can take all of this as really bad news if you want, and go, this guy came and spoke to us today, and it was all really bad. Or you can do the flip of that, which is the message I'm trying to give you, which is if you learn this and see this, you can use this to your advantage. If you see the recession and you see it for where it's at, and change some of the stuff in your business, start to invest now, start to get productive now, then you can get the whole upswing. And now if you get the whole next upswing, and that's a full 5 year cycle, then you'll be well cashed up, ready for the next mini recession. And while we're going into that recession, I can guarantee you there'll be a whole bunch of businesses in the world that'll be hurting big time in that one, because they did nothing. And those that are cashed up will be running around buying all of those and making themselves a lot of money. That's what's going to happen in the next recession. So there's some nice messages there if you want to hear them positively. I was asked by Peter to give you 3 clues around what I've been seeing with clients and 3 things I've been telling clients to do to make more money in their businesses right now. And this particularly applies to lettings and all property in general. But there's 3 things that I've been telling people to do, and I've got 3 case studies off the back of this. But these are the 3 things that I'm seeing working brilliantly well right now. The first one is people who run campaigns. And a campaign is something that's bigger than your business right now, and you're getting messages out to the marketplace. And it's essentially taking out a storyboard around a campaign. And look, I just happen to be an example of that. I could have got up here and spoken to you about how to coach your business and how to make more profit and how to get your valuation up and how did I help those 2 little old ladies, etc., etc. But I've been running a campaign for the last 5 years called "This is what's going to happen in the economy and this is what you can do with your business." And we've now got this following. There's these people who have been, who some of them we don't even know. They've been dialing into our website and reading all of my articles. You can get those 43 articles if you want, by the way, on my website, and they're free. So people have just been dialing in and getting all this stuff and starting to follow us. And at the back end of the recession, we've got this huge database now of all these business people who are interested in something that we didn't have at the start of the recession. And I would never have got them if I hadn't run a campaign. So I've been encouraging people to see the opportunity to get a storyboard or a message out there into the marketplace around a campaign. And I'll give you a client example of that in a minute. Product differentiation is just massive, and I see this as a big opportunity for you in the property game. I've already done this with a couple of letting businesses already in the last 5 years. But this is, at the moment what you've got in most sectors is people knocking on the client's door and saying, I can do this for you. And you line up 5 competitors and they're basically all saying the same thing. There's no differentiation at the moment. And if you look at the stories of companies that do well coming out of recessions, what they do is they innovate or they differentiate. And it doesn't mean that you need to go and design the cure for cancer. It does mean you just have to slightly package differently than everyone else in your market. And you can win massive market shares by just doing that. And again, I'll just give you a quick example. The last one there we affectionately call UPS, which is upselling from product sale to solution sale. So I've been moving people towards this solution sale. And solution selling is massive in your industry. The people that I'm seeing in your sector who are solution selling are winning. They're getting big growth gains. They're getting big market shares. I've got 2 clients over in the United States who, in the property sector, who particularly applied this, and they've just had massive growth over the last 3 years, while everyone else around them is sort of falling apart. And so it's called solution selling. Let me just give you 3 examples, and I've asked one of my clients to come along today because I think you should all be using it. But ladies in the room, write down the name Cellgenics. Cellgenics, it's up there on the screen. Celgenics. Cellgenics was started by the lady by the name of Marion Byrne. Jump on the website and have a look at it. But this is an example of product differentiation. And Marion went about designing skincare, facial creams, eye creams, night creams, and all sorts of stuff by using a crystallization process that no one else in the world had had before. Went out and designed this in a sector that I know is hugely competitive. And has designed this brand new product, and it's literally flying off the shelves. Met her at a talk. She came up, showed me the stuff. I went home and she gave me a sample of it. I went home and gave it to my wife, and now my wife won't use anything else. So ladies, if you want to write the word eye cream down, that's the one that my wife's using, and she seconds it's the best thing since sliced bread. Now the message is what? That is a really highly competitive sector. And there's someone who created product differentiation and is getting huge growth and huge profit uplift. The one down the bottom is a lady in the UK by the name of Penny Power. Penny Power started a company called eAcademy, if you want to look that one up. Penny Power went on a campaign, so she's the example of a campaign. And Penny Power knows digital and social world really well. And so she stepped out of her business called E-Academy, and she went on this campaign to try and fix youth unemployment in this country. And so she said, I'm going to take my knowledge of digital, and she went up and did a joint venture with another lady in business up north who runs apprenticeship programs. And she got built with this lady the first ever apprenticeship program in the world for digital, social and digital. And they're now offering apprenticeships to young people, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, through colleges to do an apprenticeship in digital. It's the first one in the world. They took it to the government and they said, this could help us fix youth unemployment. The Minister for Business has got behind it. All these colleges around the country are signing up for it. And they're going to put about 1,000 apprentices now through this program in the next 12 months, pre-signed up and ready to go. And the government pays £8,000 per apprentice. You go £8,000 times 1,000 people for a first year business. And it gives you an idea of the sort of volume they're going to do in their first year. And they've just had, literally this week, they've just had someone fly in from Australia and say, we want to take this to Australia. So you can see this is going to go global. How did that all come about? It came about because a lady sitting in her business and went, if I ran a campaign using what I know, what could I do? And she ended up creating this other business. And the one I want to finish on is a client by the name of Neil Davidson, who I asked to come here today. Because Neil literally told me a story about his business helping a lettings agency, and I had lunch with him a couple of days ago, and I said, I'm off to do this talk at this letting agency thing, and he said, I just helped a company in the letting agency industry. And Neil runs a company called My Web Presenters, if you want to look them up, and or talk to Neil because he's here. And My Web Presenters is a bit of technology that goes on your website and helps create live on the website. And Neil said to me, if you go and scan 1,000 websites and ask how many of them are using video production and all that sort of stuff, he said the number's way under 5%. Most of them are still using a fairly static website. And he said what we do is we bring in actors and actresses and all that sort of stuff and bring people live onto the screen. And they start to talk to people and all that sort of stuff. And he started giving me some examples of how they do it. So, if they went and did it for Virgin Holidays, because people go through, want to book a holiday, then you have to fill in a form, and people struggle to fill in forms. And so now someone comes onto the screen and says, you want to book a holiday, let me talk you through the form. And so there's someone actually live now, talks you through which box to tick and how to tick it and all that sort of stuff. And Virgin Holidays ran the campaign without Neil's technology and ran the campaign with Neil's technology and had a 30% uplift in sales. For the lettings agency that you just did, did you say 170%? 170% increase in click-through from hit the website to click-through and want to do something on a website for a lettings agency business. I think that style of thing is the thing that people, if you want to spend another £1,000 on marketing, these are the sorts of technologies that you can use these days, in my view, to help you get sales through the door. So for that, you should all be talking to Neil. Separately, what is Neil? Well, Neil is an example of what I call a solution sell. He goes out there and finds a problem in the world and then designs a solution around that to come up with something different. And for the lettings world, what I see is an opportunity for people, and I helped a lady by the name of Kemi, who's in your sector, and she came to me and said, what have I got? And I said, you need to find the problem that everyone's got in this space at the moment, and then find the solution for that and go and sell the solution, not sell lettings. And she's done that, and sales and that sort of stuff have just sort of ploughed. So 3 things. I combine that with second brick wall commentary, and the conclusion of my talk is pretty easy. The world is not coloured, it's black and white. It's all mathematical based, which I have a lot of fun with, because people love to come up afterwards and say, Darren, you're completely wrong, it's all about people. And I go, yeah, I know it really is, but can you please do a bit of maths in your businesses at the same time? Have a look at things like how many staff are you employing and see whether you've got the right numbers in them, because that's really going to dictate a lot of stuff. If you're unsure, just email me and tell me, I'm running a lettings agency and I've got 16 people in it, and I'll email you straight back and say that's the wrong number. And then you'll email me back and go, what's the right number? And I'll email you back and say, what it'll cost you. And we'll have a fun dialogue between us. But seriously, I understand businesses are about people. I employ 135 people myself now, and of course it's all about people and culture and that sort of stuff. But my message is that, businesses are also a bit mathematical. the economy is the economy, and it's about to move, and you need to move with it. And some of these examples of these businesses out there are people who are actually getting lots of growth in their businesses right now. Thank you very much for your invitation to be here.